Jazz is certainly one of the most influential sire of the last 30 years. Over 3,000 registered foals, 160 Grand Prix horses, and 54 approved or licensed sons. Jazz has undeniably put his stamp on the breeding of dressage horse. But of his descendant, which one could be the current heir to his title? Which one can pass on similar qualities? Could Vitalis be the one? Let's follow the link from Jazz down to Vitalis. At the time of his conception, 35 years ago, the highest level of dressage were dominated by the G and W lines, as well as the very early representative of the R and D line that would come to dominate just a little bit later. These lines have now virtually disappeared from today's highest level of competition, replaced by others, such as the evolution of breeding and the demand of a highly competitive sport. Jazz arrived at his licensing with his very uphill built, extravagant trot, narrow body, and absolute dismal performance over fence, and was going quite against what had been approved in the past. Previously, all-around horses were favored. But Jazz arrived at the time registries were looking to specialize, to produce horses born with the aptitudes for higher-level dressage or jumping, but not necessarily both. The jack-of-all-trade were out, and the what you breed in, you don't need to train in was now in. Jazz was by a Grand Prix sire and out of a strong dressage-proven dam. He had the right breeding, the right attributes, and for the right time, and so he was narrowly approved. He very quickly made his mark by producing electric, agile, light-footed horses. His babies were more sensitive than what people were used to and required a certain quality of riding, something that was simply different than what had worked for the G, R, and D lines. But for those ready to transition to this kind of riding, mostly the professional aiming for the highest level, he was much appreciated. Like most stallions in the breeding world, he was first judged on the quality of his sons and later on the quality of the production of his daughters. And so we know him as the sire of the fabulous Johnson, but also Winton, Don Juan de Hus, Don Olimbrio, and Olivi, to name a few. Through performance, Parzival certainly gave him great publicity, but through his daughters, we get to Vivaldi. Vivaldi, born in 2002, continued the tradition in Holland of favoring sires that had themselves competed at the highest level. His sire, Craxi, was proven in this regard, and so the concentration of dressage talent continued in Vivaldi. He was reserve champion of his performance test and impressed by his incredibly uphill trot as well as his head and neck set. He competed up to Prix St. George, and while trained at home up to Grand Prix, his breeding duties took over and he never did compete at Grand Prix level. Conformation-wise, Vivaldi often passed his flat croup, his lower heels, but the quality of his legs were good, better than Jazz certainly, and his movement was consistently good and well suited to the higher level of dressage. He was also known to produce good temperament, sensitive enough, but not difficult. Of his 1,368 offspring registered so far, 172 have competed at Prix St. George or above. He also has 67 approved or licensed sons, notably Desperado, Viva Gold, Vivino, My Vitality, and Vitalis. By 2017 or so, he started to be seriously plagued by fertility issues that had been lurking in the background, but were getting worse. It was getting more and more difficult to get offspring by him, and so breeders started looking at his sons as an alternative. Vitalis was born in 2007 and was originally registered as Capriole, since 2007 was a C year for the Dutch warmbloods. His name was quickly changed to Vitalis at licensing to emphasize his link to his very popular sire. And indeed, it is easy to see why he was seen as a good alternative. So far, he has managed to have more offsprings than his sire, thanks in part to better fertility, but he also has more approved than licensed sons, proving that he produces very well the type of horses that breeders and the registries want to see. As we can observe from his breeding index, he produces almost as well as his sire. Vitalis being so well received prompted the owners of his dam to breed her 7 more times to Vivaldi. And so Vitalis has 4 full brothers. 2 of them are licensed, My Vitality and 1, 2, 3. The other 2 are still too young. He also has 3 full sisters. Like his sire and his maternal grandsire, Vitalis is chosen for the great front end and free shoulder he brings. He also generally adds size, and his beautiful long neck set very upright with a good hinge over the top. He gives a good walk with a good rhythm and a snappy trot. He also has the weakness of producing a better front end than a hind end, and so he does well with mares that have a powerful hind end. He is nearing 20 now and facing the competition of a lot of younger stallions, including his own sons, such as Valverde, Tesla, Vaderland, Vapanciero, and Van Onzu. But breeders continue to return to Vitalis for his consistent great production, type, movement, and rideability. Jazz will likely never be surpassed. He arrived at exactly the right time and had the qualities the mare base needed at the time to bring up the dressage aptitude of a whole generation of horses. While he has been cloned 3 times, and you can therefore obtain his genetic material once more, his descendants offer more refinement, elasticity, and correctness than he ever did. But for those looking for that active front end, vertical neck set, and uphill build without the tension, Vitalis has certainly proven himself his heir, with the added value of not being as sensitive or reactive, and therefore more attractive to the demanding amateur riders.